Hello, a very warm good evening to all of you, and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to the second session for the Conquer Prelims program of Environment Ecology, where today we are going to cover the important species in news which are critically endangered, some of the important treaties, for example, the Global Plastics Treaty, which was making news headlines as well, the production gap report, the emission gap report, some of the reports, some of the protected areas, such as the Valmiki Tiger Reserve. So, all these areas which can be relevant for your examination, along with the practice questions, is something that we are going to take a look and discuss in the next couple of hours. Now, what I expect out of you is that when we are discussing any of the species, we will be discussing multiple species today. So, do make a note of it in an A4 sheet paper, and at the same time, do try to attempt the practice multiple choice questions and try to get the maximum of them correct. Having said that, the PDF of the entire session shall be available in the link which is provided in the description below. Other than that, tomorrow you can also download it from my Telegram channel itself, the PDF of both the sessions, that is yesterday and today. That is something that can be downloaded. Now, without further ado, let us initiate with the first topic of the day, and that is the case of the Plastics Treaty. Now, when we talk about Plastics Treaty is a global initiative whereby the effort is to prevent the plastic pollution which has been happening across the entirety of the world. Now, this is something which has been in the works for at least 3 to 4 years, and subsequent negotiations have remained in a kind of a deadlock or a failure. Countries like India, Saudi Arabia, they stand opposed to the clauses and to the very basic principle that the plastic treaty is actually trying to propose. So, what is this plastics treaty and what are its conditions, and where have the negotiating commissions and the meetings taken place previously? That is something we will take a look into. So, first of all, it is an internationally legally binding agreement. Mind you, this treaty has still not come into force. The moment the treaty comes into force, that is when it will be an internationally legally binding agreement. But that is the framework of it, that till now it has not come into force, and till now it is still under negotiation, which has been failing time and time again. Now, the aim of it is simple: to reduce the plastic pollution which has been happening across the world. That is the overall aim. Now, here, if you take a look at it, it has been initiated by a resolution adopted in the United Nations Environment Assembly, which was held in March 22 in Nairobi. So, since that point of time, it has been in the works. Now, why is it that the plastic treaty is not being signed by the nations? Why is it that still we have so many failures? So, there are certain issues associated. First of all, when we talk about the case of the plastics, now these plastics, they are manufactured. Yesterday we had seen in the difference between bioplastic and biodegradable plastic, that plastics are manufactured from the source, that is fossil fuels. Source is fossil fuel. Now, various different countries, the oil producing nations, they are not comfortable with curbing down the supply of the fossil fuels which will be utilized for the manufacturing of plastics. So that is why countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, etc., they are not on board with this basic idea about reducing the manufacturing of plastic. Secondly, for the manufacturing of plastic, it is labor intensive. That is, you have lot of employment, low level paying jobs, right, which are created in countries like India, Bangladesh, etc., in the manufacturing of plastic. That is why when the treaty says we will put a ban on the new plastic being manufactured, countries, they get uncomfortable. This is why India is not on board. Then, overall, the understanding is that, see, manufacturing is not a problem. Even if you stop the manufacturing of fresh plastic, will all the plastic wastes automatically be treated? No. So that is why countries, that is the oil producing countries, they have the argument that it is not a manufacturing problem, it is a waste management problem. That the waste which are generated, that is not being managed. So, the argument of countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia goes that even if today we stop plastic manufacturing, we don't use fossil fuel for the manufacturing of plastic, will it be the case that tomorrow no plastic waste will be found anywhere in the world? No, because countries like India, etc., African nations, they don't have such a greater capacity of waste management. So, that is where you have the waste management issue as well. Then why is it that the treaty is not being ratified or signed, or it is not being agreed upon? Because just like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, this is a consensus, consensus based treaty, not a majority based treaty. That is, unless and until all of them are on board, unless and until all of them agree to the norms of the treaty, any of the clauses cannot be changed. So, because of the lack of consensus, that means everyone should agree to each and every clause. That is why it is oftentimes stuck in a kind of a deadlock. Now, here, due to the failures of the negotiating committee, the intergovernmental negotiating committees which have been framed for coming up with the guidelines and the negotiating agendas, now they have been meeting time and time again. The last meeting happened in August. Now, that also resulted in a failure. So, because of that, many of the other European nations, some of the African nations, they are turning out slightly restless. They want this plastic pollution to stop. So their argument is that look, you basically, if you cannot prevent the manufacturing of plastic, what if we prevent selling you the chemicals which are used for manufacturing of plastics? There are various chemicals which are used in manufacturing of plastics. Now, those chemicals, the argument is let's put that under the aspect of the Basel Convention of the transboundary or the transnational exchange and trade of the chemical products. So that is where you have the high ambition coalition which has been formed. It is a group of 75 nations: EU, Rwanda, Peru. These are amongst the leaders, small island nations, Latin America, African, and European nations, advocating strong measures like capping production and banning toxic chemicals as per the Basel Convention. Basel Convention. Okay. So that is where the High Ambition Coalition is associated with what? It is associated with the Global Plastics Treaty. This is a simple prelims type of question which can be framed. Okay? So, till now, what have we seen? Global Plastic Treaty, it has not been framed. The conversation has been going on. When was it decided? United Nations EA, that is the Environment Assembly, which was held in Nairobi in March 2022. Now, the meetings are being held in various different places. Now, these meetings are being held by the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committees, or the INCs. So, INC 1 happened in Punta del Este in Uruguay, then in Paris, France, then Kenya, Canada, South Korea, and latest in August 2025 in Geneva, Switzerland, which led to a failure. So, very briefly, you need to keep in mind these kind of or where these events have taken place. So, very briefly, let us talk about all of them in short. So, first meeting happened in Uruguay. Okay, so here the conversation was about what should be the scope of the Global Plastics Treaty, right? Then here also some of the deadlock started to happen, that are we looking at a complete plastic ban or are we looking at limited plastic usage? So that was marked in November 2022 in Punta del Este, that is Uruguay, INC 1, Uruguay. INC 2 then shifted to Europe in Paris, in France. That is where the discussions happen on preparation of a basic negotiating platform, basic negotiating points, or a zero draft. Then 2023, then it basically went to Kenya, right? Nairobi, Kenya, from where the United Nations Environment Assembly had started the basic discussion. So INC 1, Uruguay, INC 2 in Paris, France, INC 3 in Nairobi, Kenya, INC 4, Ottawa in Canada. And that is where the discussion basically started ranging to the chemicals of concern. which are utilized in manufacturing of plastic. INC 5, Busan in South Korea, and INC 5.2, that is Geneva in Switzerland. Okay, so starting with Uruguay, then you have France, then you have Kenya, then Ottawa, that is Canada, after that Busan, that is South Korea, and then you basically have Geneva, Switzerland. Okay, so let's take a look at the basic question. According to the timeline, which city hosted the first round of negotiation for the global plastic treaty? So, A. Paris, France; B. Nairobi, Kenya; C. Punta del Este, Uruguay; D. Switzerland. It should be easy. We have just now covered it. So, INC 1 happened in Punta del Este, that is Uruguay, where the talk or the conversation was finalizing about the terms of the treaty. And there also, there was a deadlock created because of the what is the expectation, complete ban or limited usage. So, INC 1 in Uruguay, 2 in France, 3 in Kenya, 4 Canada, 5 South Korea, and 5.2 in Geneva, Switzerland. Now, before moving on to the next species, so here an announcement for all of you preparing for the prelims examination. Unacademy revision test series is something where you will get around 2500 plus high quality prelims questions. So you are getting close to around 10,000 newer content topics which you can look into. 8 subject wise online test, full test with the CSAT. So do take a look at this test and do practice and be closer to the goal. Now, then let's come to another species in news. And with the help of this species, we shall be taking a look at the larger species, that is the bustard species. So, Bengal florican. Now, this is a critically endangered species. Now, this Bengal florican, overall, where is it found? Now, this Bengal florican, by the way, it is known for the unique dance that the male species or the male members they do indicate to attract the females, right? So, widespread historically in the sub grasslands of the subcontinent, right, in the Southeast Asia, and range is very fragmented. In India, it is to be found in Assam, Arunachal Pradesh. So, in the region around Kaziranga, you will find the presence of Manas also. You'll find the presence of Bengal florican. Globally found in Nepal and Cambodia, other than India. So, if a question is asked that it is to be found only in India, that is something that you have to look out for. Now, here, these species are critically endangered and these species are at risk. Why? Because when you have these tall grasslands, there they can easily hide and they can basically hide away from the predators. Now, because of the disturbance due to climate change, the rainfall is less, the green cover is reducing. So, as a consequence, their camouflage or their hiding areas are reducing, due to which they are easily spotted by the predators. They are hunted down as well, and that is where the numbers continue to decline. So, the male courtship display is something which is spectacular. He leaps several feet into the air above the grassland canopy, flashing his white wings and calling out to attract females. Highly dependent on native, undisturbed grasslands. Now, this is critically endangered. Now, in India, this is not the only bustard species that you find. In India, you basically find four bustard species out there. Okay, so great Indian bustard, all of you would be aware about. Great Indian bustard, typically to be found in the region of Rajasthan, Western Rajasthan. This is also critically endangered. Lesser florican, Bengal florican, both of them critically endangered. Then McQueen's bustard is also something which is found in India. But McQueen's bustard is not originally to be found in India. It is a migratory species of bird which is under the vulnerable category. So this is migratory and comes over to India during the winter months. It is typically to be found in Western Asia and some parts of Central Asia, South Central Asia also. So that is where all the rest three, that is Great Indian Bustard, Lesser Florican, and Bengal Florican, these are the species that you will find critically endangered, which is to be found in India. Now, what is the range? So, here you can see the range of it. So, basically, when you consider the Great Indian bustard is to be found in the region of western part of Rajasthan, some extent of Maharashtra, some extent of Karnataka also hosts that condition where the bustards can live, but not found in that large number. Lesser florican in the areas in central India, in semi arid regions, also in Gujarat. Now, the case of Bengal florican, some areas of the Tarai belt, Pilibhit Tiger Reserve, for example. Then, other than that, in the region of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. So that is the extent of the Bengal florican. Okay. Now, these are the three bustard species. So overall, how many bustard species to be found in India? You have four bustard species to be found. That is lesser florican, Bengal florican, Great Indian bustard, and McQueen's bustard. Okay. Now, another aspect important for your prelims is the release of the State Energy Efficiency Index. Now, this State Energy Efficiency Index has been released, which maps out the performance of the states when it comes to the combat against the climate change, efficiency in terms of the emissions, the buildings, the how many of them are following the building codes, etc. So that is where the State Energy Efficiency Index is of use. Now, this State Energy Efficiency Index, you will observe that it ranks the state amongst the achievers, the high performers, and so on. So, first of all, for your prelims, what is important? That who releases this. So, release it is basically State Energy Efficiency Index developed by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Now, this Bureau of Energy Efficiency in association with Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy, that is AEEE. So BEE along with AEEE, easy to recall for you also. Now, here what happens is that energy efficiency of the states and the UTs that is done, and monitoring is done based upon the data and overall the buildings, the industry, transport, agriculture, the municipal services, all of them are monitored, and then the states are classified into various categories. The states are classified into front running states, achievers, contenders, and aspirants. Okay, so this is the four different category: front runner, achiever, contender, and aspirants. Okay, now top performers: Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Assam, and Tripura. These are the top performers in terms of the energy efficiency. 24 states have notified the building codes. 10 states have MSME energy efficiency policy. 31 states have adopted electrical mobility policies. So, overall, if you take a look at, for even example, the promotion of solar energy, Kerala has achieved almost 74% adoption with the solar powered agricultural pumps. Right? So, here, state like Kerala, they are leading the roost. 36 energy or the states and UTs have developed the state energy efficiency action plans as well. Now, compared to 2023, number of front runner states that has basically declined. Earlier it was 7, now it is 5. Okay, so these trends is something you can keep in mind. Okay, so Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu maintain their positions. Now, Assam and Kerala figure in the achiever category, whereas Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, Odisha, and Uttar Pradesh in the contender category. So let us take a look at this question. This kind of questions can be framed. So, which organization in association with the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy developed the State Energy Efficiency Index 2024? This should be easy. Not all the data, you don't need to recall all the data. For example, Kerala achieving 74% adoption of the solar powered agricultural pumps, that is something which is vital. So here, very good. The correct answer is B. Now, United Nations Environment Assembly is associated with which treaty? I hope that is also something that we have not forgotten. We have recalled that. So, United Nations Environment Assembly is associated with the Global Plastics Treaty, right? So, that is where the negotiation for the Global Plastics Treaty had started. So, the correct answer in this is Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Now, another critically endangered species, that is Asian giant tortoise. Now, this Asian giant tortoise is a critically endangered species which has been introduced in the state of Nagaland, right? So, it has been introduced in the Zelang Community Reserve in Nagaland's Peren district. Now, what you have to know about this Asian giant tortoise is that it is the largest tortoise in Asia, considered to be one of the oldest of the tortoise lineages, right? Now, they share an interesting behavior with many crocodilians, that is to protect their eggs and maintain appropriate temperature for incubation. The crocodiles also, they maintain the sufficient temperature for the incubation. As hatchlings, they appear grayish and then eventually become more dark colored or charcoal colored. Now, they can be found where? In the tropical and subtropical regions of the world. In the region, they are found in Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Okay, so Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Bamboo shoots, tubers, and other vegetation. So they are basically like many of the turtle species, they are omnivores. Some small insects, some small invertebrates is also something that they can consume. Okay, so they are in the omnivore category and they are critically endangered. Now, Dongar cultivation was also in use. Now, what is this Dongar cultivation? So when we say Dongar, so this is a local method of cultivation without deep plowing or much tilling of the land. Now, Dongar cultivation is a traditional organic mixed cropping system practiced by the Kond tribal community in the region of Odisha. Okay, so here when we talk about the mixed cropping system, you grow multiple crops to retain different types of crops to retain the fertility of the soil. And here you will observe that this Dongar cultivation has been carried out in a very organic manner and has been a traditional method of cultivation which has given the farmers some basic amount of income. Now, it involves almost a practice of zero tillage. You don't plow the land too much, right? Because that will make the land drier. So here, what do you grow? You grow, it is a rain fed kind of cultivation, so irrigation facilities are not easily available. So you tend to grow pulses, oil seeds, millets, and wild foods on the hill slopes to ensure the food diversity and basically self sustenance. Now, why this is in news? Because this region in Odisha is now being taken over by many of the plantation workers, and also you have the plantation owners from the southern part in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh who are coming over there to grow eucalyptus and even cultivate cotton. So they are basically evacuating many of the farmers from that region, due to which they face displacement, and that is why Dongar cultivation has been in news. Now, system is designed for uplands and hill slopes, and it avoids deep plowing, relies on hand tools. Fully organic, avoids chemical inputs, and helps maintain soil fertility and biodiversity. Similar method of cultivation is also to be found in Madhya Pradesh, where it is known as Bewar or Dahiya. So it is a nothing but a similar method of cultivation. So in Madhya Pradesh, Dindori district, you will find that. So mixed cropping of millets, pulses, oil seeds, all those which can grow just by the rain. They don't need separate amount of irrigation. Now, such kind of traditional cultivation you will find to be carried out in other parts of the country as well. For example, in the region of Manipur, you have Pamlau. Then in the region of Arunachal, you have the Aptanis wet rice cultivation. What is Pamlau? So it is like jhum farming, slash and burn cultivation, rotational clearing of forest. Crop includes cereals, pulses, vegetables. So you cut the forest, you burn the residue. That is the jhum farming that you would have studied. Now, in Aptani's wet rice cultivation, intensive valley wetland system where you grow paddy, okay, paddy farming with even fish rearing. So, fish rearing, and it is basically so in paddy cultivation, you carry out flood irrigation. So, you flood the entirety of the farmland. So, in that flooded portion, organic materials are also present. So that is where you allow for some amount of fish rearing as well so that you can multiply your income. Now, the issues with the monocultural practices, which are basically being taken over by eucalyptus and bt cotton. Now, here it is important for you to know some properties of eucalyptus as well. Is eucalyptus a native species of India? The answer is no. Eucalyptus is an invasive alien species. Okay. Now, it is not something which is native to India. Now, this grows very quickly and produces a lot of biomass. For example, the stems, the green foliage, the leaves, etc. That rate of production is very, very high. So, eucalyptus, efficient biomass producer, can produce more biomass than many other tree species associated. As a result, it basically of the fast growth of biomass, eucalyptus species consume more water as compared to the other native species because they have to grow faster. So that is why wherever you have large eucalyptus growth, that is where you have the drying of the land as well. The land basically becomes much drier, and then the land becomes prone to forest fire events as well. Okay, so that is the case of eucalyptus. However, when eucalyptus is grown as a short rotational crop, right, for high biomass production and removal, that is when the soil fertility is also reduced. Not only is it dried out, even the nutrients they basically get extracted. Now, eucalyptus has got allelopathic effects also in the nearby plants. What are allelopathic effects? So, basically, we will take a look into it. But overall, because any area where eucalyptus is grown, the other native species of plant that starts to die, so the species diversity of plants is reduced, so the number of animals, birds, etc., which can be found in the region, that also reduces, harming the entire biodiversity. Okay, so monocultures worsen the vulnerability to climate change as well. So what is allelopathy? So basically, when you grow a certain kind of a plant, or a certain kind of a plant grows in an area, now, the roots will end up secreting certain chemicals, and these chemicals, water soluble phenolic compounds. In organic chemistry, those of you who have studied it, you would have studied about the aldehydes, ketones, phenols, etc. So, you have the release of these phenolic compounds, and they inhibit the growth of the other compounds also. So, as a consequence, the neighboring plants they don't grow to such an extent. That is allelopathy. Okay, so allelopathy oftentimes is the release of those chemicals, compounds by an existing plant, which will impact the growth of other plant species in the region. So that is allelopathy. Okay, so that is something that you find eucalyptus to be capable of doing. Now let's take a look at the practice question. So, Dongar cultivation is a traditional organic mixed cropping system primarily practiced by which tribal community in the hilly regions of Odisha, India? Aptanis, Baigas, Kond, or Gond? Simple. It is C, that is the Kond, right? It is very similar to the Bevar or Daya system which you observe in Madhya Pradesh Dindori district. Okay, now let's take a look at another question. Which of the following statements correctly describes traditional farming practices mentioned in the sources that we have discussed? Dongar cultivation involves deep plowing of the hill slopes to improve soil aeration. The Bevar Dahya method in Madhya Pradesh is similar to the mixed cropping nature of the Dongar cultivation. Pamlo in Manipur is an intensive valley wetland system combining paddy farming with fish rearing. So, in this, what is the correct answer? Right. So, this is also comparatively slightly easier. So, if you take a look at the first statement, Dongar cultivation involves deep plowing of hill slopes. No, hand based tools. Plowing is not carried out. Now, Bevar Dahia method in Madhya Pradesh is similar to the mixed cropping nature. That is correct. Then Pamlo in Manipur is intensive valley wetland system combining paddy farming with fish rearing. Is that correct? No. Pamlo is jhum farming, slash and burn. Right? The one which has been described here is the Apatanis. Apatanis, wet rice cultivation. Okay? Pamlo is associated with jhum farming. So here the correct answer is what? B. That is 2 only. Okay. Then another species which has been cited recently as well, not to be found in India though, but UPSC has been asking you questions about species which are not found in India. So that is why this species has made global headlines. It is also referred to as the unicorn of Asia because of how rare it is. The species in itself has been declared or has been discovered in the recent decades itself. So that is Saola. So Saola is also what is referred to as the Asian unicorn, one of the world's rarest and most elusive large land mammals, where it is to be found in the Annamite mountains of Vietnam and Laos. So to be found in Vietnam and Laos, also referred to as Asian unicorn, discovered only in 1992. Both male and female, they possess long, straight, parallel horns with sharp ends. And the name Saola is a Lao name meaning spinning wheel posts. That is the shape of the horns that are associated. This is the shape of the horn. This is also considered to be critically endangered. Where is it to be found? It is to be found in the Annamite Mountains of Vietnam and Laos in East Asia. Okay? Then, Indri lemurs. Now, they were in news owing to the case of DNA identification and further breaking of the genetic code as well. UPSC has asked about Indri lemurs previously also in the prelims examination. So, you should be aware about Indri lemurs. So, Indri lemurs or babako, now that is one of the largest surviving lemur species. Where is it to be found? In northeastern Madagascar, only to be found in northeastern Madagascar. Resides in coastal and montane forest from sea level almost to the height of the rocky terrain in Madagascar up till 1800-meter above sea level. Right? The round head, pointed face, and furry ears. It has got a rudimentary tail and large hand and feet. Now, here, overall, they are active during the day and they are thoroughly arboreal. So, they climb in upright position and feeds on leaves, fruits, flowers, and other vegetation. It is also critically endangered. For all the species, we have mentioned the IUCN status. For all the species associated, I have mentioned the IUCN status as well. Okay, CR basically represents for or represents critically endangered. Okay, till now, there have not been any species that we have discussed from yesterday where we have not discussed the IUCN status. Okay, so CR refers to critically endangered. Here also you'll find critically endangered. Okay. Now, Clean Plant Program has been so critically endangered species which have been in use. It is important for your examination. Yes, critically endangered. Now, it will not be asked that which is critically endangered. That kind of question nowadays, post 2018, UPSC is not asking, but it can ask you about which of these species is known as the Asian unicorn, right? So, big associated with Saola. Then Or where are Asian unicorns to be found? Now, which of these species are endemic to which regions? Match the following. So, those kind of questions associating with the features that can be asked, right? So, some of the species, so for example, that is why what are the critically endangered species that we have discussed till now? We have discussed about the Bengal, lesser florican, and the great Indian bustard. Then we have discussed about the Asian giant tortoise. Asian giant tortoise introduced in Nagaland's community reserve, which is also to be found in the neighboring region of Bangladesh. Then you have Malaysia and Indonesia. Then we have discussed the critically endangered species of Indri lemurs and Saola. These are the critically endangered species that have been discussed. Okay. Now, Clean Plant Program has been initiated by the government. What is the purpose of this Clean Plant Program? That is something which should be clear. Who has initiated and what are the features of the Clean Plant Program? What are the initiatives under this? So, conceptualized by Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare in collaboration for the funding with the Asian Development Bank, ADB. Now, why? For healthy, disease free planting material of key fruit crops. Because it has been observed that in many of the fruit crops which are grown across the country, the farmers they end up incurring huge amount of losses crop because of pest attacks, because of at the time of germination itself, when the seeds were germinating, since that time itself there would have been a fungal infection, or worse, the seed would have been of a poorer quality. So that is why, to ensure that the horticultural production of India, which is already crossed 300 million metric tons, now that further increases, increasing the farm income as well. The government, Ministry of Farmers and Agriculture, or Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, they have initiated the Clean Plant Program. So, to enhance farmers' productivity and profitability, boosting the competitiveness of India's agricultural produce. The need systemic pathogens, right, which leads to pre-harvest losses as well. They reduce the crop quality, quantity, and the longevity. So, starting, how do you do that? Disease-free planting materials have been recognized as the most effective strategy. So, when you plant the seed, that seed should be disease free. So, implementation is by the National Horticultural Board, that is the implementing and the executing agency. National Horticultural Board. The program has been initiated by Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare in collaboration with a funding agency, that is Asian Development Bank. They have launched the Clean Plant Program. Who will implement this? Is it the Ministry of Agriculture which will implement this? No. You will have the National Horticultural Board which will implement this. Okay? Now, here in association with ICAR, right? Now, initiative, basically we have talked about ADB, which is providing investment as well, approved loan of $98 million. Now, here providing access to virus free high quality planting material. Nurseries will be provided with certification. Not all the nurseries will be under this entire scheme. Some of the nurseries who will fulfill the criteria of standardization, they will be approved, accredited, and there only from there the seeds and the saplings will be distributed to the larger farmers. Now the consumers and the customers will also benefit, and it will also bolster our exports. Key initiatives: 9 clean plant centers are to be established across the country. 3 will be in Maharashtra, where Pune will be the center for grapes. Pune will be the center for grapes. Okay, lot of grape cultivation and vineyards are already to be found in the region around Pune Nashik belt. That is where grape cultivation and vineyard is already there. Then Nagpur for oranges, for oranges. Okay, then you have Solapur for pomegranates. Okay, pomegranates. These three you have to recall. Now, modern nurseries are to be developed with an investment of 3 crores as a support for large nurseries. Now, from here, seedlings, disease free seedlings, will be given to the farmers. International cooperation from Israel, Netherlands, etc., will be taken to understand the growth mechanism. National level laboratory to be set up in Pune for species cared and nurtured under Clean Plant program. Now, horticultural production in our country, that is where the National Horticultural Board comes into the picture. Now, the Clean Plant Program already complements the MIDH, that is Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture. So, the government scheme, Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, is an old government scheme which was initiated way back in 2014-15, but you have to retain the name of this scheme for the growth of the fruit production, growth of the orchard farming, and so on. Okay, let's take a look at the practice question. Now, consider the following statements regarding the implementation and financing of the Clean Plant Program. National Horticulture Board serves as the implementing and the executing agencies. ICAR oversees technical progress and capacity building. Total investment for Clean Plant Program includes a loan approved by the World Bank to the tune of $98 million. This should be easy. Right. So, in this, the first statement that we see, that is, National Horticultural Board serves as the implementing and the executing agency. Implementing ed agency and executing agency. Is that correct? It is correct. Second, the ICAR oversees technical progress and capacity building. Is that correct? That is also correct. Total investment includes a loan approved by the World Bank to the tune of $98 million. Is this correct? No. It is Asian Development Bank, not the case of the World Bank. Okay? It is Asian Development Bank. So the correct answer in this is going to be D, that is 1 and 2 only. Okay? Now, biodiversity heritage site is in news because a new biodiversity heritage site has been identified in the region of Bangalore. But we will take a look at what constitutes a biodiversity heritage site, which central government or state government who is empowered for that, right? And what are the criteria which need to be fulfilled. So the government recently declared 8.6 acres of green cover at the Cantonment Railway Colony as the Biodiversity Heritage Site, which is the second in Bangalore. Now, what are biodiversity heritage sites? Unique, ecologically fragile ecosystem where they do represent a unique ecosystem, cultural diversity oftentimes, and that represents a mosaic of sometimes human environment interaction as well. Some of the biodiversity heritage sites across the country, you will observe the first biodiversity heritage site in the country was which one? You have the Nallur Tamarind Grove. Tamarind Grove. Okay, that is in Devanahalli, in outskirts of Bangalore. This is in Karnataka. So this was the first biodiversity heritage site of the country. Okay. Other than that, you have Hogekran, which is in the region of Chikmagalur, which is which has got the Shola vegetation. Then in the Nallur Tamarind Grove, it is important for you to understand that you not only have the tamarind grove, along with that you also have some of the remnant chola architecture. So that is also something which makes it very vitally important. Okay, now so that means human and ecological both balance are to be sought, and that is where biodiversity heritage, right? Now, Section 37 of the Biodiversity Act 2002. Here, the state government, in consultation with local bodies, may notify areas. So, it is the local bodies, the State Biodiversity Board, or the Biodiversity Management Committee at the state or the district level, which identifies a region and then it is recognized by the state government. Now, here, state government, in consultation with the central government, may frame the rules for the management and conservation of the biodiversity heritage areas. Then also, under the same Biodiversity Act, you will observe that the state government is empowered fully. State government is fully empowered to frame the schemes for compensating or rehabilitating any person or sections of people economically affected by such notification, if they have to vacate, if they have to relocate for the displacement. So what should be the rehabilitation amount? For deciding that amount, it is the state government which is completely, wholly and solely accountable, and they can frame the laws. Okay, so first of all, it is identified with the local bodies, then accreditation and approval given by the state government. In order to frame the laws and the rules in the biodiversity heritage site, state government can consult with the national government. But when you notify an area as the biodiversity heritage site, many people will be relocated. So for that, you basically have the state government which is empowered for the compensation amount. Okay, so state biodiversity boards may invite suggestion for declaration of biodiversity heritage site through the biodiversity management committees and other relevant community institutions. Criteria: you don't have to retain the criteria, just understand the basic aspect of it. So areas that contain a mosaic of natural, semi-natural, or even man-made habitats which contain substantial diversity, significant domestic biodiversity component, areas that are significant from the biodiversity point of view, as well as important cultural spaces like the Nallur Tamarind Grove, areas including very small ones that offer refuge or corridor for threatened and endemic flora and fauna. So here, for example, you can have the Hogekran in Chikmagalur. Hogekran in Chikmagalur. Okay, so here, Chikmagalur. Now, this is a region of shola vegetation which is utilized by species when they are migrating from the region of eastern Ghats to western Ghats. Okay, you have around 40 biodiversity heritage sites in our country. Okay, now areas that provide habitats, aquatic or terrestrial, maintained for as preservation plots, medicinal plant conservation areas, all of them can be biodiversity heritage site. Let's take a look at this question. Which statement regarding the management and declaration of biodiversity heritage site is most appropriate according to the Biological Diversity Act 2002? National Biodiversity Authority frames rules for the management and conservation of BHS. State governments must obtain permission from the central government to frame schemes for compensating people affected by a BHS notification. State governments are empowered to frame schemes for compensating. Only the state biodiversity boards have the power to initiate the identification process for BHS declaration. So here it is the third statement, C, which is correct. Why is D not correct? Because even BMC, that is the Biodiversity Management Committee, they also have the power. Okay. Now, another critically endangered species that we are going to take a look into is the silverback or the cross river gorilla, one of the most endangered primate species anywhere across the world is the cross river gorilla. So here, where is it to be found? In the region of Nigeria Cameroon border. That is where You would have seen basically when we were discussing places in news, one of the bordering regions of Nigeria is the region of Cameroon, densely forested. So there you have the presence of misty mountains where you have the critically endangered cross river gorilla. Lesser than 300 individuals, they remain. Now, this is a subspecies of the larger western gorilla, the larger group that is the western gorilla. Okay, they are most endangered primate in Africa. They are very social and usually live in groups of 2 to 20. They are herbivores, but when they sense a kind of a danger to the family or the group, that is when they can get very aggressive, and they are quite powerful to say the least. Now, IUCN Red List, that is critically endangered. Where are they to be found? Misty mountains in the region of Nigeria and Cameroon. Okay. Saola, where was it to be found? In the Annamite Mountains of Laos and Vietnam. So these are Indri lemur in the northeastern region of Madagascar. Okay. So these are not the species that you find in India, but they are in news. They are critically endangered as well. Okay. Now, Production Gap Report 2025 was released. Now, what is this Production Gap Report? So, basically, if let's suppose you have to keep a track and you have to ensure that the global warming does not exceed 2 degrees Celsius of warming by 2100 or 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming by 2100. In that case, you have to limit the production and the utilization of coal. You have to limit the production and utilization of oil. You have to limit the production and utilization of natural gas as well, all the fossil fuels. Right. So, let's suppose you have to limit the warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. So, this should be your utilization, let's assume. Presently, and as per the policies of your government, you are utilizing and producing this much amount of fossil fuel. So, the gap in the existent production to the intended production of the fossil fuel to maintain the level of climate, that is production gap. Okay, so this is the actual production, and this is where you will come across the intended level of production. Okay, level of production. So that difference is indicated by the production gap report. Okay, now here it is released by multiple agencies. The agencies become important: Stockholm Environment Institute, SEI, Climate Analytics, right? Climate Analytics, and also the International Institute for Sustainable Development. These are the three institutes which are responsible for the release of production gap report. Now, the aim to track the discrepancy between the present levels of production and what should be the production in order to maintain the level or limit the level of warming. So here, basically, the governments in aggregate still plan to produce more than double the amount of fossil fuel in 2030 as compared to what is required to keep the level of warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100. So that is where the production levels are going to be very, very high. So here, this is the government plan and projection, which is very high, and what is required for 2.5 degree 2 degrees Celsius warming. This should be the production for 2 degrees Celsius. For 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, this should be the level. Okay, so the gap which is present, that is what is referred to as the production gap. Taken together, the government now plans even higher level of coal production, for example, and gas production up till 2050 as compared to what their plans were a couple of years ago. So whatever the government plans were by 2023, by the year 2025, that plan has increased. Same is the case overall with gas production also, oil production also. So here, the governments now plan to produce 120% more fossil fuel than what would be compatible with 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, and 77% more as compared to the 2 degrees Celsius warming. So if you have to keep the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the governments are producing 120% more or 77% more. Coal is the most misaligned sector in terms of what is intended and what is the actual production. So in coal, you will observe that it is 500% higher than the level consistent with 1.5 degree level of warming. Oil, it is basically 31% higher than gas, 92% higher, right? So here, coal overall for 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway is the most misaligned sector with 500% higher amount of production which is intended. Now, in the terms of the countries involved, you will observe that China and India, they are the ones who are basically seeking to produce more because the energy demand is higher. So that is why China and India, they are going to produce and utilize more fossil fuels in the future. And this basically goes against the national pledges that the countries have made with regards to the even Paris Agreement. Now, multiple different countries have been profiled. Which are the countries which have been profiled for the production gap report? Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Colombia, Germany, India, Indonesia, and so on. You don't need to retain all these industries. Now, how the report is prepared? All the government policy, the government initiatives, the present level of production, that is prepared, that is maintained for these individual countries, and accordingly, the country's profiling is done. So, which sector is cited as the most misaligned sector in the production gap report of 2025, with a projected production in 2030 being 500% higher than the level consistent with 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway? So, this should be simple. So, which is that? It is coal. So, for 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway, it is exceeding by 500%, right? And for 2 degrees Celsius pathway, coal is exceeding by almost 330%. Okay. For 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway, after coal, which is the most misaligned sector? After coal, it is the case of gas. Okay. After that, you have the gas, almost 92%. Yesterday also, we had seen that in the case of the global energy review, right? In that, we had seen that amongst the fossil fuels, the role and the share amongst the case of fossil fuels, gas's role was the highest, and the share of oil was at its lowest in the past 50 years, right? That is something we had seen yesterday in the global energy review. Profiling basically means that when you take a look at a particular country, now whether that country is doing well or not, how do you do that? For example, let's suppose I have 5 candidates. Now, some candidate will be good in polity, some will be good in economy, some will be good in geography, some in history, some of them in all. So that is where I know about the benefits or advantages or the disadvantages that each of the candidate faces. So I'm profiling each of the candidate. Then I can make an analysis that this one requires or this individual requires attention in this area and so on. So I can basically prescribe something. So that is the purpose of the production gap report also, to highlight that where the world is going wrong and what should be done by the government. Okay, I hope that is clear. Right. Method by which the gap is identified. The method by which the production gap is identified, looking at the present production levels. What are the present production levels, for example, in each of the countries for these fossil fuels? Now, how aligned is that with the 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway? What is 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway? That is, if I have to limit the level of warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius as compared to pre-industrial era, what should be my utilization and production of fossil fuels? So if I judge it with the present production level, Then, for example, if you take a look at the Government of India programs, now Government of India intends to set up certain thermal power plants in different parts of the country. In the next 5 to 7 years, many more thermal power plants are about to come up. Now, these thermal power plants will operate on coal. So that means your production is going to increase in the next 5 to 10 years as well. So that means what should be the intended production? Your actual production is going higher for the next 10 years. So that gap that you attain, that is the production gap. Okay, clear? Now, which three organizations are specifically mentioned as being amongst the leading research institutes that release the Production Gap Report 2025? This should be easy, right? So here you basically have B, that is Stockholm Environment Institute, Climate Analytics, and International Institute for Sustainable Development. 1.5 degrees Celsius warming is that temperature has been rising continuously since the time of industrial revolution. So the temperature should across the world should not rise on an average beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius as compared to what was the temperature during industrial revolution. Now, an initiative which has been launched in our country, that is Tiger Outside Tiger Reserve, TOTR. Now, this Tiger Outside Tiger Reserve initiative is to raise awareness and to bring about conservation of tigers outside the tiger reserve. We know that in India, the population of tigers have been increasing substantially. Okay, so here many of the tiger reserves, they are facing the brunt of some amount of overpopulation as well. As a consequence, the tigers then venture into regions of human habitations, regions of other areas, due to which they can enter into conflicts, and many of them are turning out to be dead as well. So, to conserve the tigers outside the region of tiger reserve, this is the initiative. So, this was launched when? During the World Wildlife Week. Yesterday, we had discussed National Board of Wildlife in the discussion of World Wildlife Week. So during that World Wildlife Week, you had the which was celebrated at FRI in Dehradun. That is where the TOTR initiative was also launched. Right? It is a national level initiative by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and also by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. It will be implemented. The plan period is 2025 to 2028 to reduce human tiger conflicts, to protect tigers that move beyond the reserve boundaries, to foster landscape level conservation strategy as well. Now, 80 forest divisions in 17 tiger range states, including Maharashtra, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam, all of these areas will be involved. Buffer zones and corridor areas are being focused upon because it is the core area is where you have maximum conservation and maximum population. But once the population starts to increase, because mind you, tigers are solitary animals, right? They don't live in large groups. So each individual tiger can have their own space of close to around 70 square kilometer or 100 square kilometer. So they start moving out of the core zone into the buffer and the transition area. It is there in transition area also that many of them are killed, hunted down, and from transition area they will enter into the tiger corridors and move into other tiger reserves. So that is where they require maximum conservation. Okay, so formation of rapid response teams with local youth equipped with tranquilization gear and vehicles, and Bag Mitra. This is an outreach program for students also, which is associated, and jungle camps for the students to promote a kind of coexistence. So, Bag Mitra is also one of the important initiatives. So, Bag Mitra is associated with which program? TOTR. Okay. NTCA will oversee the overall implementation. Right? Now, State of Finance for Forest Report 2025. Now, this was a first of a kind report which was generated. Now, first of all, it is released by whom? So, State of Finance for Forest, what does that report indicate? It basically indicates that for the forests across the world, where is the funding coming from? and how much funding is done by the public measures, the public sources, that is the government, how much of it is private funding, how much of it is donor funding or donations which are going in which areas. So, as per this, it was found out that China has got the largest amount of funding associated with the conservation of forest, followed by US, then followed by India. In India, maximum amount of funding is by the government, and that too as a part of agroforestry programs overall. So that is something which has been found. Then also, who are the donors and where does the donation go to? So that is basically the finding as per the state of finance for the forest is concerned. Okay, so here basically the United Nations Environment Program has published it. It is the first report and it is the first edition, obviously. So, global public and private financial flows into the forest. Now, what are the findings? The findings are that what is required overall across the globe for funding of the forest, for conservation of the forest, actual amount of money which is going is very less, right? So, there is a large funding gap also which exists. So, here the funding needs to more than triple to around $300 billion by 2030. Most of the funding, that is 9 out of 10 rupees of the funding, is coming from government sources, the public sources that are responsible for majority of the funding, and there's a large funding gap of $216 billion annually. That is what is required and what is actually reaching. Okay, so in 2023, for example, $84 billion were pumped in for the conservation of forest. Out of that, 91% came from the public sources. So what is required? $300 billion. So what is the funding gap? $216 billion. Okay, now that is where we need to expand the forest to 1 billion hectares by 2030 to meet the global biodiversity framework and CBD goals as well. So, right now, as of the data of 2023, the funding provided is $84 billion. What is required? It is required that you increase that to $300 billion by the year 2030. Now, amongst the countries funding the forests, now here you will observe that China provides the maximum amount of funding, that is close to around $19.4 billion is provided by China, right? India stands number 3. Now, in India, you will observe maximum amount of funding is obviously by the government, and it is the agriculture and the forestry portion where the maximum funding goes to. Okay. Now, whereas in the case of China, protection of biodiversity and landscape. Now, in US, for example, you will observe that large amount of funding goes for protection of biodiversity and landscape as well. So this is where India's funding is close to around $7 billion. Right? Now, China, 19 billion, US, 12 billion. Okay? Now, public domestic flows, the finance flows are overall the highest. Now, public domestic expenditure in tropical forested areas, China might not be considered to be tropical forest. So, in that, India has got the maximum share. So, amongst the tropical regions, the public investment which is done for the conservation of forest amongst the tropical regions, India has got the maximum amount of public funding. Okay. Now, the financing inflows overall highest in Africa, then Latin America and Caribbean, and then Asia is at number 4. Country wise division overall in terms of the donations which are going, so there India stands at number 6. Tropical region, India stands at number 6. Argentina is not tropical, that is why the blue color. So, country wise division in terms of the donations, funding, donations. Okay, there India stands at number 6. Now, 80% was offered on concessional terms, primarily through developmental initiatives. Now, who are the major donors? So, amongst the countries, Germany and UK, they are the largest bilateral donors. Germany and UK. They are the largest bilateral donors, providing almost half of the funding. Amongst the multilateral sources, International Development Association provides 65% of the total of the multilateral institutions. Then International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, and then European Union institution, GCF and GEF also provide other funding. So, amongst the donors, countries at a bilateral level, Germany and UK, right? Then almost 49%. Then international institutions, multilateral institutions, largest share is by International Development Association, followed by IBRD, then followed by the European Union institutions. Then carbon capture, usage, and storage. Now, CCUS. This was based on a report which was generated about Asian countries, their own involvement and their role in carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So, if you take a look at it, so CCUS, now what it is, we will talk about in detail. But why are we discussing this? Because Climate Analytics has come up with a report for the Asian countries, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, about the carbon capture initiatives that they are carrying out and how that can turn out to be disastrous for these countries because these countries don't have a proper plan. Now, what is carbon capture, utilization, and storage? So, for example, when you consider any fossil fuel, now when you burn that fossil fuel, from there, carbon dioxide, methane, etc., that is released. So, you basically, with the help of the available technology, you trap that carbon compound. Then you store that carbon compound deep underneath the Earth's surface, subterranean level, depleted oil reserve, or you transport it somewhere, right? With the help of the pipelines or ships, you transport it somewhere. You have the Northern Lights project in the Nordic countries, Northern Europe, where you have the transportation of the stored carbon, which is also done, and then eventually you store it in the deep underground regions like Iceland is doing, in depleted oil and gas reserves to increase the overall efficiency and the output. So that is where the storage can also be done. So that is the overall CCUS process. Now, how do you capture the carbon? Right. So there are certain methods by which you can capture the carbon. First of all, you basically go for post combustion capture. Post combustion capture. Now, what do you do in this? In this, after the emission has been carried out, so from the emissions that are there from the chimney itself, you take the gases, you separate carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide you tend to store. So that is post combustion capture. Then after that, you also have the pre combustion capture. Pre combustion capture, where prior to burning the fossil fuel, you basically separate the carbon compound. So that is very complicated and a costly process. Then you have direct air capture. Direct air capture. So in this, what do you do? From the ambient air, the air that is around us, that air in itself, you start separating the carbon dioxide and you start storing carbon dioxide. This is where you can not only remove the present carbon dioxide load, but even the historical carbon dioxide load can be removed by DAC. Then, after that, you have a method of combustion of carbon in pure oxygen, right? Higher grade of combustion in pure oxygen so that you don't have any impartial burning leading to CO, carbon monoxide release, etc. So, these are the four different carbon capture methods. So, pre-combustion removes carbon dioxide before the fossil fuel is burnt. So, fossil fuel, what do? In that fossil fuel, you convert into a gaseous state. You carry out a gasification process, which turns it into a mixture of hydrogen and CO2. Then you remove that CO2, you burn only hydrogen, so it will be like a hydrogen fuel. and the CO2 will be separated. So obviously you can imagine, for any kind of fossil fuel, for example natural gas, crude oil, etc., if you turn it into the gaseous state, it is a very costly and energy intensive process. So you will end up polluting the environment much more, right? So hydrogen is burnt as a clean fuel in that. Post combustion, after the emission has happened, from there you capture the carbon dioxide. Direct air capture, you basically remove CO2 from the ambient air itself, and that is where you basically utilize it to clear the historical load of pollutant as well. And then you have oxy-fuel combustion. There, the fossil fuel are burnt in pure oxygen, producing CO2 and steam for easy capture. So this is the four methods. This is being asked. CCUS is being asked in prelims for the past 2 years now in running. So you should know the different methods of CCUS, which is in news. Okay. Now, synchronous all India elephant estimation 21 to 25 has been carried out. Now, from here for your prelims, what is important? Which region of the country has got the highest population of elephant? Which state in the country has got the highest population of elephant? This is important for your prelims examination. Okay. Which one is the most expensive? In carbon capture, utilization, and storage, the pre-combustion storage and extraction is one of the most expensive, right? And for direct air capture, we don't have that good technology. So presently, all of them are expensive. The most affordable is post-emission carbon capture. After the emission from the chimney itself, you start separating carbon dioxide with the help of charged particles. So that is the most affordable that we have. Okay. Now, direct air capture, in that you basically have the instruments which are deployed, which start filtering the, just like your air filters are there. So they filter out carbon dioxide of the air and the carbon compounds out of the air. Now, the data for the synchronous all India elephant estimation was released, and in India, you have 22,446 elephants. Elephants, as per the IUCN list, the Asian elephants, they are in the category of endangered. Okay. And they have been in that category for a very, very long period of time. India accounts for the largest population of Asian elephants, with around 60% of the population spreading from the eastern India to some parts of the Tarai belt and majorly in the central and the southern part of the country. Now, they are counted every 5 years since the launch of Project Elephant. Project Elephant was launched when? 1992. Project Tiger was launched when? 1973. Project Rhino was launched when? 2005. So these are some of the things which should be kept in mind. Now, these are the areas where you can see the population density of the elephant. You'll find larger population density in the region of the Western Ghats, in the region of the Tarai Belt. That is where the population density. Some areas like Jharkhand, there you have observed, as per the estimation, that elephants have moved out into the neighboring state. So some of the states have indicated a massive decline in the elephant population as well. Okay, so Western Ghats, largest number of elephants, close to around 12,000 jumbos. Then northeastern hills and the Brahmaputra flood plains, 6559 elephants. Shivalik hills and Gangetic plains, 2000 elephants. Central India and eastern Ghats, 1800. Right? So maximum in the region of Western Ghats. After that, you have the northeastern states, Brahmaputra Delta and the Brahmaputra river system in that area. Then after that, you have the Tarai belt of the Shivalik and the Gangetic plains. Then after that, central and eastern India. Eastern India. Okay. Amongst the states, the highest population of elephant is to be found in which state? In the state of Karnataka. Karnataka with the highest population, followed by Assam, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Uttarakhand, and Odisha. Okay, so Karnataka, followed by Assam, followed by Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Uttarakhand, Odisha. Okay, now in Karnataka, Brahmagiri, Nilgiri, Eastern Ghats, that block is the home to largest subpopulation of elephants in the region of Western Ghats. It has got one of the largest elephant reserves, that is the Mysuru Elephant Reserve, is situated. The Nilgiri Elephant Reserve, Wayanad Elephant Reserve, all of that overlies in the region. Now, compared to 2017 numbers, estimated elephant population has dipped by nearly 18%. Now, that is largely being cited by the officials as responsible for inaccurate data in the previous measurement. So, that is what they are saying, that the present data will be considered to be the baseline data. So, with the highest dip across northeastern region and central and eastern India, Jharkhand and Odisha, they have indicated a decline of 68% and 54%. But there it is the case that the elephants have migrated to Chhattisgarh. From Jharkhand and Odisha, elephants have migrated to Chhattisgarh. That is why Chhattisgarh has seen an 83% rise in elephant number as compared to the last census. So that is aided by the cross migration. Okay. Now, then 23 for 23 initiative. Now, this was launched to raise awareness for snow leopards. So, we will take a look at this initiative briefly, but other than that, we will concentrate into the area of snow leopards. So, 23 for 23 initiative. So, it was observed on International Snow Leopard Day. So, basically, encouraging people to engage in physical activity for 23 minutes to raise awareness for snow leopard. So, this simple question can be asked. It is associated with which kind of species, right? So, what explains the dip in northeastern region? That is where I told you that in the case of northeastern region, the previously data in itself was indiscrepant owing to the inaccurate counting measures. That is what the official sources are telling us. Now, here, the first ever snow leopard census has been concluded recently, and overall in our country, the population of snow leopard is across 718. Right? Ladakh alone has close to around 477 individual population of snow leopard. So, highest population of snow leopard in which region of the country? That is in Ladakh. Himachal Pradesh 51, Uttarakhand 71, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim 61, Jammu and Kashmir barring Ladakh is 58. So highest in Ladakh, followed by Uttarakhand, then followed by the region of Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, then Jammu and Kashmir. So if you consider Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh together, they account for more than 500 of the snow leopard population. Now, here basically the International Snow Leopard Day, that is where the entire conservation of snow leopard across the world, those initiatives receive a boost. Now, India basically is dedicated to the goal of global snow leopard and ecosystem protection program, GSLEP. Okay, Global Snow Leopard Protection and Ecosystem Protection Program that you have. So, collaborating agencies, MOEFCC, supported by WWF India, Snow Leopard Trust, that is not very important. What is important for you to be aware about? What is this Global Snow Leopard and Environment Protection Program? So, here, when we talk about this program, it was born out of the recognition that snow leopard is a flagship species. It indicates the survivability of the larger ecosystem as well. And conservation of snow leopard is akin to the conservation of the high altitude ecosystem. For example, we have Secure Himalayas in our country as an initiative. So, when was it launched? October 2013 in Bishkek, that is in Kyrgyzstan. That is where the 12 snow leopard range countries, they signed the Bishkek Declaration. Which are the 12 snow leopard range countries? So, the subcontinent, that is Afghanistan, Bhutan, that is where. Then China, India, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, right? So, other than Turkmenistan, all the Central Asian stance that you will observe: Russia, Nepal, Mongolia, Pakistan, that is there. Okay. So if you take a look at the countries, so start from the Central Asian region. So Tajikistan, you will have Kyrgyzstan, you will have Uzbekistan, you will also find Kazakhstan. Right? These are the four stans. Then you come to Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Bhutan, Nepal. That is the subcontinent that you have covered. Then Russia, Mongolia, China. These are the 12 countries which are considered to be the range countries for snow leopard. In simple terms, wherever you will find the high altitude mountain ecosystem, there you will find snow leopard. High altitude mountain ecosystem, will you find them in Bangladesh? No. Will you find them in Myanmar? No. Turkmenistan is also a desert area. That is why not even in Turkmenistan. So, Tajikistan, remember we have been studying Tajikistan for Fedchenko Glacier, one of the largest glaciers outside the polar areas. Fedchenko Glacier, present to the north of Pamir. We have discussed that in places in news as well. So, Tajikistan will be there, Uzbekistan will be there, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, then Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, China, Mongolia, and Russia. Okay? Now, Secretariat is in Bishkek. So, the Global Snow Leopard and Environment Protection Program works on the Bishkek Declaration of 2013. Program is Global Support Components that provides transboundary technical research, knowledge sharing, and so on. Okay. Now, the mission included an initial Secure 20 by 2020 initiative. Secure 20 by 2020 initiative, that was basically to secure at least 20 snow leopard landscapes. 20 snow leopard landscape means what? At least 100 breeding age snow leopards to be found in that entire area. So that is the considered to be landscape. So those across these 12 snow leopard range countries, their conservation was sought. Overall, snow leopard, what is the criteria of conservation as per IUCN? They are vulnerable. They are strictly carnivore. They consume blue sheep, Argali wild sheep, ibex, marmots, pikas, deer, all of them. Found in high altitude mountain ranges of Himalayas. We have seen highest population in Ladakh. Then you will find some portion of Himachal Pradesh, also Uttarakhand, then Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh. That is where you will find them. Okay. Now, then Project Sloth Bear has also been initiated in India. Excuse me. So, Project Sloth Bear is one of the initiatives to conserve the population of sloth bear in India. Sloth bear is one of the most predominantly, most widely found species of bear in our country. So, here seeks to secure and restore India's sloth bear population. Sloth bear is listed as vulnerable by IUCN. Where are they to be found? Almost in the entirety of central and southern part of the country. Even in some parts of eastern India, you will find sloth bear. So see, 20 Indian states, right? And it is endemic to the Indian subcontinent. That is to be found in India itself, right? They are endemic to the Indian subcontinent. They are nocturnal, active during the night, and they are omnivore. They can consume insects, fruits, or honey. Okay. Now, it will be running from 2025 to 2030, which will include mapping, understanding the habitat patterns, the conditions in which they survive, conflict management, hotspots, all of that. Who will lead that? Wildlife Institute of India, implemented by 16 state forest departments. So, Wildlife Institute of India will launch that and will lead that implementation agency, state wildlife departments. Now, Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve was also in news. Now, why was it in news? Because UNESCO officially announced the designation of Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve as a part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. Okay. So 26 new sites have been added across the world by UNESCO in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve to indicate increased level of conservation and best practices which are followed. Now, this was done during the World Congress of Biosphere Reserves, which was held in China. Now, India now has got 13 biosphere reserves, which are a part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. Okay. Now, which are the biosphere reserves in India? This is a list of all the biosphere reserves which are present in India. The largest of the biosphere reserves in India is Kutch. Okay. And amongst the smallest ones, you will find the region of Dibru Saikova amongst one of the smaller ones. Now, Cold Desert is the northernmost biosphere reserve that we have, followed by the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve in Uttarakhand, then Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve in Sikkim, which also extends into Nepal, then Manas and Dibru Saikova Biosphere Reserve in Assam, then this is where you will have the Dibru Saikova in this portion. Then Dehang Biosphere Reserve in Arunachal, Nokrek in Meghalaya, Sundarbans in West Bengal, Simlipal, important tiger elephant corridor, that is in Odisha. Then Achanakmar Amarkantak in the Bilaspur region of Chhattisgarh. Then Panchmadi, Panna in Madhya Pradesh. Kutch, we have already taken a look into Sheshachalam, the region where you have the red sanders. That is the Sheshachalam region. That is where Andhra Pradesh, that is where you will find the Biosphere Reserve. Nilgiri in the region of Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, parts of Kerala. Gulf of Mannar, we have studied about Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve yesterday in the case of Dugong. And then you have the Agasthyamala, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and also the Great Nicobar. So these are basically all the various different biosphere reserves. Out of that, you will observe that Nanda Devi, Kanchenjunga, right, Nokrek, Sundarban, Gulf of Munnar. Okay, so let me basically erase everything first so that you can understand this. Nanda Devi, Kanchenjunga, Nokrek, Sundarbans, Great Nicobar, Gulf of Mannar, Agasthyamala, Nilgiri, Achanakmar Amarkantak, Panchmadi. These have already been included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. The latest addition is the Cold Desert Biosphere Reserve in Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so that is what makes the total number of biosphere reserves in India, which is a part of WNBR. It has been taken to 13. Okay, now what constitutes a biosphere reserve? When do you declare a region as a biosphere reserve? So, a biosphere reserve within itself can include a tiger reserve, national park, wildlife sanctuaries. Many of them can be included within that. Typically, a biosphere reserve is not only an area for conservation, it is a larger area associated for research and development to include people's participation, sustainable way of management, cultivation, everything is promoted, and that is where you basically get the biosphere reserve requirement. So each of these sites which are selected now, they integrate the main aspects, that is conservation of biodiversity and cultural diversity, economic development, that is socio-culturally and economically sustainable, logistical support underpinning development through research, right? So that is basically where the and how a biosphere reserve can be declared. Overall, it will involve the core area, maximum conservation, okay, where you will have maximum genetic diversity as well, maximum number of species. Then you will have the buffer zone around it, that is the buffer zone. So here, sustainable agricultural practices or sustainable activities can be carried out, scientific research, monitoring to understand the species behavior, and then you have the transition zone to the outskirts of it. Here, sustainable human and economic development overall can also be carried out. Now, when we talk about the cold desert biosphere reserve, it is present where in the glacial valleys and the high altitude region of Himachal Pradesh, covers the Pin Valley National Park, the Chandratal and the Sarchu Valley, and the Khyber Wildlife Sanctuary as well. Right. So here, multiple high altitude species like snow leopard, Himalayan ibex, blue sheep, all of these you will find there. Okay. So cold desert biosphere reserve includes which three distinct protected areas? Take a look into it. Which are included in the cold desert biosphere reserve? Sundarbans, Gulf of Mannar, and Pork Bay. Then Pin Valley National Park and Khyber Wildlife Sanctuary, Kaziranga National Park, Pin Valley National Park and Chandratal, Nilgiri, Nanda Devi, and Manas. This should be easy. Pin Valley, Khyber Wildlife Sanctuary in the region of Chandratal and Sarchu. Okay. Now, emission gap report, very similar to production gap, but in this case, you monitor the emission. What is the intent? What should be the intended emission and what is the actual emission? Who releases it? It is released by United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. So UNEP does release the emission gap report. Now, basically, the report highlights what will be the condition if we continue to emit as per the present scenario. What will be when all the countries, the targets that they have given as per the nationally determined contribution of the Paris Agreement, what will be the condition in that case, and the necessary pathway of emission which is required to maintain the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. So, under the current policies, global warming is projected to reach about 2.8 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. If all the commitments by the countries they are fulfilled, all the countries are honest, then the warming will be 2.3 to 2.5 degree Celsius. And here the report has highlighted that 1.5 degrees Celsius level of warming is something which is not achievable now, right? So the gap is very high. If you consider 2030 also as a kind of a benchmark here, what should be the amount of emission and what we are doing, that gap is very high. So global greenhouse gas emissions are estimated to be around 57.7 gigaton of carbon dioxide equivalent in 24. Now, here, to align with the Paris Agreement goal of 2 degrees Celsius warming, emissions should drop by 35% by 2035 as compared to 2019 levels. Okay. And if you have to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the emissions have to drop by 55% by 2035. G20 countries account for 77% of the global emissions. Okay. India has recorded largest absolute increase in the total greenhouse gas emissions globally in 2024. That is where India is a standout here in this. That is absolute increase in the total greenhouse gas emissions in 2024. Now, India's greenhouse gas emissions increased by 3.6% in 2024. Amongst the major emitters, the rate of increase is second highest, but the absolute numbers, it is the highest. Per capita emissions, however, of India is well below the global average. Why is that? That our per capita emissions are low? Because the population size is very high. So total emissions by the population, that gives you the per capita emission. So our total population number is very high. That is why the per capita emissions are low. Okay, let's take a look at the practice question. Now, in the context of UNEP's Emissions Gap Report 2025, consider the following statements. Report assesses the gap between the projected global greenhouse gas emissions under current national pledges and the emission level consistent with limiting the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and well below 2 degrees Celsius. According to 2025 report, if all current NDCs are fully implemented, the world is still on track for around 2.3 to 2.5 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. India recorded the largest absolute increase in the total greenhouse gas emissions in 2024 However, per capita emissions remain amongst the lowest. To keep 1.5 degrees Celsius target within reach, report recommends that global emissions must decline by at least 35% from 2019 levels by 2035. So in this, the first statement is correct. That is what the emission gap report is. Second statement is also correct, that as per present condition, the world is going to attain a temperature of 2.8 degrees Celsius higher than the industrial pre-industrial revolution temperature. If all the commitments are met, it will be 2.3 to 2.5. India recorded the largest absolute increase in total greenhouse gas emission. Correct. Now, the decline for 1.5 degrees Celsius target should be 35%. This is incorrect. It should be 55%. 35% is for 2 degrees Celsius goal. Correct answer is going to be B. Tropical Forest Forever facility was initiated at Conference of Parties number 30 at Belém in Brazil, and it was concluded there. Now, what is this Tropical Forest Forever facility? So basically, it is going to pay the nations, the tropical countries, to conserve their forest, right? So, what will be the overall structure of it? So, you will have donor nations. The donor nations will provide donations. Now, that will be managed overall by the Secretariat and eventually the investing arm. That investing arm will take that money, will invest in the various green sectors of the emerging markets across the world. Emerging markets across the world. From the return that they generate, they will pay back the donors in full, and the extra interest that they have generated from that, they will keep on paying the tropical countries around $4 per hectare per year as an incentive to conserve their forest. That is the overall idea about the tropical forest forever facility. Okay. Now, the need for it, because when we talk about the forests in the tropical region, they have a they are more denser in general. The density of the vegetation is higher. So that is where the amount of carbon sequestration is very high. So in the region of the tropical forests, canopy cover is higher, right? Canopy cover and density is higher. Due to this higher canopy cover and density, you will observe basically that rate of carbon capture and sequestration, carbon capture and storage is also higher. Okay, so that is why they are able to conserve much greater amount of carbon dioxide. That is why they need to be protected. Now, most of the tropical regions, you will find that deforestation is happening. Tropical regions, you will find that deforestation is happening. For example, in Indonesia, now you have the military, which has been involved in carrying out faster deforestation for nickel mining and also for agricultural purpose. So deforestation is because of majorly economic factors. Economic factors. That is why you basically provide a compensatory mechanism so that these tropical regions, they don't carry out deforestation. Okay, so that is the basic purpose. So it is an investment fund designed as a permanent self-financing vehicle through which net returns will be awarded to almost 74 developing tropical forest countries, keeping their existing old growth forest intact. Secretariat called the Tropical Forest Forever Facility and Investment Fund, that is the TFIF, will invest the money given by the contributors in emerging market bonds, avoiding fossil fuel like coal, natural gas, etc. Now, here rewards the countries protecting forest yearly $4 per hectare. Right? Now, investors' initial contributions are returned by TFIF in full. Returns of those investments are used to pay back the original investors in full. The commitments: Brazil, $1 billion because it was the host of conference of parties. Colombia to $50 million. Indonesia 1 billion. Netherlands 5 million. Norway 1 billion over a decade, 3 billion over a decade, and Portugal 1 million euros. So these were the initial investors. Multiple other investors will also join in. Now, challenges: market volatility can basically consume the entirety of the funds, and then who will give money to the investors, who will give money to the developing countries, that is not clear. The terms and the conditions of these developing countries, what criteria do they need to fulfill, that is also not clear. Now, Conference of Parties number 30 in Brazil. Now, this was concluded recently in Belém. Now, we have done the detailed marathon session for all the Conference of Parties and their outcomes from Berlin to Belém. The link for that video you will find in the description section. Now, here, just looking at the brief outcomes of COP30 Brazil, which is only relevant for your prelims, one of the brief outcomes was declaration linking climate with hunger. So here, for example, all the conference of parties, as we had discussed in the marathon session, they are known for different things. For example, COP28, which was held in Dubai, that was known for linking climate with health. That is where there was a first time linkage of climate with health. That was COP28. COP30 is known for linking climate with hunger. Okay. Now, here, heads of state from 43 countries plus the EU adopted Belém Declaration on Hunger, Poverty, and Human Centered Climate Action. Because due to climate change, we have discussed yesterday, there is increased level of warming due to which there will be crop failures, which will impact the food uncertainty as well. Okay. Now, major announcements: Tropical Forever Forest Forever facility, that is something we have just discussed. Baku to Belém roadmap in terms of financing, the new collective quantified goal in terms of financing and mobilizing of resources. Then you had another initiative which was almost co sponsored by India, that is Belém Forex initiative, that is to quadruple or multiply by 4 times the use of sustainable fuels like green hydrogen, green methane, etc. So, utilization of sustainable fuels to be increased by almost 4 times. Quadruple the use of sustainable fuels, biofuel, hydrogen, synthetic fuels by 2035 as compared to 2024. It includes Future Fuels Action Plan, which has been endorsed by 23 countries. Then you also have Belém Declaration on Global Green Industrialization. This is for the developing countries to be able to get the financial and the technical assistance for setting up green industries. Because for green initiatives, lesser emissions, you need better technologies, and that is something that the developed countries can provide. So, out of this, the Tropical Forever Forest Forever facility is very important, and Belém Forex initiative is also very important because both of them will directly have an impact on India. Okay. Now, International Red Panda Day was celebrated. So here it is basically, when is it celebrated? Third Saturday of September is when we celebrate the International Red Panda Day to increase the awareness and understanding about the red panda. Now, red panda, this is also described as the fire fox. Now, it is found in the dense forested ecosystem in the Indo Burma biodiversity hotspot, in the Himalayan biodiversity hotspot as well. So, this is the extent of the natural habitat that you will find of the red panda, extending from Nepal, India, Bhutan, Myanmar, and China. So, it is arboreal, small arboreal mammal found in the forests of India, Nepal, Bhutan, and the northern mountains of Myanmar and southern China. Where do you find them? mixed deciduous and coniferous forest with dense uh, vegetation of bamboo as well. It is considered to be the state animal of Sikkim. As per IUCN, it is considered to be endangered as per IUCN. Okay. Now, no, we will have multiple sessions of Conquer Prelims hereafter as well. This is just the first phase of it. So, here, the population of red panda is declining because of habitat degradation and fragmentation, predation of by feral dogs as well. So, red panda overall, the status is endangered as per the Indian Wildlife Protection Act, Schedule 1 is where it is regarded with highest protection. Population around 2500, Sikkim, West Bengal, Meghalaya, and Arunachal Pradesh. Okay. Now they have got an extra thumb, which makes it unique kind of species. Let's take a look at the practice question. Which of the following accurately reflects the legal protection and habitat of the red panda? It is listed as endangered in the IUCN Red List. It thrives primarily in dense forests at altitudes between 2200 and 4800 meter. It is protected under Schedule 4 of the Indian Wildlife Act 1972. Right. So this should be easy. Where do they live? So if you take a look at the habitat, 2200 to 4800 meter, right? So first statement, endangered, is correct, primarily in dense forest at an altitude of 2200 and 4800 meter. Protected under Schedule 4? No, protected under Schedule 1. So the correct answer is C, that is 1. And here, rather, correct answer is B, because you have to find out which of them are incorrect. So the correct answer in this case is B, that is 3 only. Okay. Now, then Indian wolf has been in use. The first Indian wolf conservation sanctuary has also been established. That is the Mahuadanar Wildlife Sanctuary, which has been established in Latehar in Jharkhand. Right? So Mahua Danar becomes important there. So Indian wolf, IUCN for the first time has evaluated the Indian wolf and overall classified it as vulnerable in the category status. Right? Subspecies of the grey wolf, which is found in the Indian subcontinent and also Southwest Asia. So in Southwest Asia also, it is found in substantial population. So where do you find this wolf species? In the semi-arid areas, scrublands, and agro ecosystems, partial agricultural regions, generally live in smaller packs, and they're less vocal as compared to the other wolf species. They have been rarely been known to howl and are territorial and hunt during the night, which is common with the other wolf species as well. Indian wolves are found in which regions of Asia? India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan. Further west, Israel, Turkey, Iran, and Syria. So, all the region, you'll find the presence of Indian wolf. So, IUCN, Vulnerable Sites, Appendix 1, Wildlife Protection Act, Schedule 1. Now, one of the most critically endangered species which is found in the world is Vaquita porpoise. Right. So, yes, Manisha, in case you don't remember Schedule 1, Schedule 2, always retain Schedule 1 requires maximum conservation. UPSC had asked a question in the prelims once that if the species of turtle is included in the same schedule as the tiger, what does it mean? So, that means the maximum conservation. UPSC had asked about the Schedule 6 in the older Wildlife Protection Act because Schedule 6 consisted of plant species. The newer one, the after the amendment of 2023, now you don't have 6 schedules, now you have 4 schedules. Okay. Now, one of the most critically endangered species that you will find is Vaquita porpoise. Now, it basically turns out to be the little cow in Spanish. Now, it is smallest member of the cetacean family, that is the porpoises, dolphins, and whales. Okay. Now, here Marine restricted to northern Gulf of California. In the northern Gulf of California, where you have the Sea of Cortez near the mouth of River Colorado, right? Mostly in shallow waters up till 50-meter deep. Now they have large dorsal fins which help them release heat in the warmer waters. IUCN, critically endangered, even as per CITES, Appendix 1. Indian mouse deer was in news. It has been cited. Now, it is the smallest of the deer species that you will find. So, where is it to be found? Peninsular India, eastern and western Ghats, Deccan, central India, the Tarai belt, and even it is expected to be found in the Tarai region of southern Nepal. Right? So, in the daytime, they hide from predators in the dens, in the trees, hollows, foliage, tree roots, etc. Now, forest fire, hunting, trapping, habitat loss, roadkill is where their population is declining. As per IUCN, least concern. Okay, there are 10 different species of mouse deer in the different world in the world, and overall they communicate through scent marks. They generally feed on, they are omnivores, right? They are omnivores, some amount of crustaceans, insects, otherwise tubers, seeds, etc. Eagles, pythons, even the eagles can pick them up. That is how small they are, right? So the size is around 25 to 30 centimeters. So think about it, the size of a larger scale. Okay, so Indian mouse deer or Indian spotted chevrotain is a species of the ungulate belonging to the family of these deers. It is endemic to the Indian subcontinent, smallest deer species found in India, mainly found in peninsular India, some parts of central India, and even possibly up till Tarai and records in Nepal. Sri Lanka has got a separate species. Now, within India, commonly encountered in Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats up till Odisha. Now, here, the unique feature is what you have to recall, that just like in other ruminants, you have four chambered stomach, but the mouse deer has three chambered stomach. Okay. Occasionally, it has been observed to feed upon the insects and the crustaceans as well. Otherwise, mostly herbivore. Now, IUCN, least concern. Because of the unique nature of the animal, that is why the animal can be asked in the exam. Now, Noradehi Wildlife Sanctuary was in news because cheetahs are about to be relocated to here also. Okay, so that is why Noradehi was in news. So it is the largest wildlife sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh. Entire sanctuary situated on the plateau, which is a part of the Upper Vindhyan Range itself. Now, Noradehi is important because it is an area which is a corridor, wild corridor between the Panna tiger and the Satpura tiger reserve. Large amount of herbivore population to be found. Also a corridor between Bandhavgarh and Rani Durgavati Wildlife Sanctuary. So as a consequence, the herbivore population can sustain a large carnivore population as well, right? Here you will find tropical dry deciduous and some amount of moist deciduous vegetation as well. Which are the river systems? Kopra River, overall the smaller tributaries of the larger Cane River. That is what you will find in the Noradehi. Okay, so teak, which is moist deciduous, mahua, moist deciduous, tendu, which is dry deciduous, all of them are to be found in Noradehi with a substantial population of tigers as well. Okay, now it is very similar, Anir, in terms of the anatomy. Then Valmiki Tiger Reserve, the last topic that we will discuss, the Valmiki Tiger Reserve. Now, Valmiki Tiger Reserve, situated in the northwestern part of Bihar in the district of Champaran, right? Dense forested area in the Terai belt. Now, that is where, due to the increase in the herbivore population, the tiger population has also increased substantially. One of the most massive percentage increases of tiger population in our country. So, Valmiki Tiger Reserve, situated in northwestern part of Bihar in the India-Nepal border, in the district of Champaran. Champaranya means The Champa, Aranya means forest. So that is why the name Champaran. So official records indicate that from 8 number of tigers in 2010, the numbers increased to 28 in 2014, 31 in 2018, and now to 54 in 2022. It is expected that this number would have increased to even 70 now. Okay, so when we talk about the Valmiki Tiger Reserve, situated in the Gangetic Plains in the Tarai Belt, and it lies in the northwestern portion with vital amount of moist deciduous, some dry deciduous vegetation also to be found. Okay, so this is where we will restrict it today. Now, today's discussion, we have mostly focused on the species and the report, the aspect of the various different kinds of reports. Graded response action plan is not that important for your prelims examination, because in almost all of them you have the basic criteria which is followed. You should know what graded response action plan is, you should understand that. But the fact that what is included in grap 1, grap 2, grap 3 and grap 4, that is something which is not that vital. You can just browse through it, but not very important. So here, that is what we will limit the discussion up till today. But please understand, this is not the final discussion for environment ecology. We will keep on coming up with the national parks in news, the species in news, the tiger reserves in news, and those videos will also supplement your preparation for your prelims examination. If you have liked the content of the video, put that in the comment section, and don't forget to click on the like, share, and the subscribe button. Till we meet again, do take care. Goodbye. Thank you.